Good afternoon. This is Animal on Control. Welcome to the voice chat. These calls are pre-recorded for uploading to social media, and by joining a call, you're consenting to being recorded. Anyone wishing to join a call should email me at animaloncontrol@gmail.com, and I will reply with instructions. Today's topics: returning members, pit nutters sent to prison, dog attack, self-defense scenarios, and potpourri. Joining me is Mr. Johnson and Joe from Animal Abuse in Hungary. What is up?
Hello, guys. How's it going?
Just living the dream. Just living the dream. Actually, something came up, last week we were discussing, we always talk about criminalizing dog attacks, sending the owners of dogs that maul and kill to prison. But what's interesting was, and I'd mentioned the Bennards, because we were juxtaposing what happens when a non-dog pet, say, kills a family member versus when a dog kills a family member. And I brought up the Bennard case because the Bennard case was the situation in Tennessee a couple of years ago where the family dogs killed both kids. And we were talking about that, and I was confident the dogs had behaved dangerously prior. I'd read somewhere that I think they'd attacked the grandmother, but it wasn't an official report. But it was one of the commenters, shout out to Robin in the comments. She's a frequent commenter, and she mentioned that the Bennards, or it was her understanding, the Bennards had actually relocated due to their dogs, attacking people, like behaving dangerously. And that's a very common scenario where either they'll move away to escape the wrath of the neighbors, or the judge will order the dogs removed from the jurisdiction. They do that a lot in Florida. That's where we have this sort of this current, or this loop of dangerous dogs. So a judge in St. John's will order the dangerous dogs deported basically to Flagler County. And then the judges there deport the dangerous dogs to Duval, who then in turn deport them back to St. John's. You just have this sort of endless loop of dangerous, rather than giving them the needle, which is what they should do. So there might be that's the case. But in any case, Robin, if anybody else has information on that, I would love to have it. To get in touch with me, you can email me. If you want me to keep your name confidential, I will do so. However, I would like to share the information. So yeah, or you can just put it in a comment. But I'd really like to know more about that. Now, pursuant to that, here I'm going to do a screen share real quick, and I'm going to, I think that's it, yeah. So we don't want to look at that. So couple sentenced to 33 years combined in deadly pit bull attack on elderly man. You guys can see this screen, right?
Yeah, I see.
Okay. All right. So anyway, yeah, this was a case, it was about a year ago, where, yeah, it is a typical scenario. You had some trashy people with their pit bulls. The dogs have been terrorizing the neighborhood. They'd injured multiple people in the past. Okay, finally, the dogs killed somebody. The man's name was, oh, shoot, now I'm drawing a blank. So they got 33 years combined. Yeah, Nahara was in it. Like Ramon Nahara was the man's name. And his wife was also injured in the attack. These two were the dog owners. And it was interesting. So the Mr. is getting 18 years in prison. The Mrs. is getting 15, although I think they're eligible for parole in 3-4 years. Still, that's a big improvement over like the current or the past arrangement. Typically, people like this would get off either completely or very, very light. So this is encouraging. You know what else is encouraging? Where is that? Yes, this poll. Maybe I'll put this link in the description. What just happened? Yeah, okay. So do you agree with the sentencing of the couple in the deadly dog attack? 76% said yes. That's very encouraging. In fact, I invite folks to forward this to their lawmakers, because going after these people is apparently a very popular position. Now, what's interesting is, what about the 24% that said no? Now, you think probably many of them are dog nutters who think that, why would you send a dog owner to prison, because a fur baby can do no wrong, right? But I'm thinking some of these people might want harsher penalties. They're saying that 18 and 15 isn't enough. They should get life or the death penalty. So, you got to look at it that way. So this is actually very, very encouraging. So I encourage people to contact their lawmakers. I was going to make some snark about dog nutters getting the death penalty. Like, if they were to sentence these two to the electric chair, do we have an execution party, like popping champagne corks, woohoo, party poppers, So yeah, but this is very, encouraging, and I'd like to see more of this. And maybe that will sort of create a deterrent to owning these things at all, because banning them effectively is a very exceedingly difficult public policy problem to solve. But it seems if we can do this, I'm all for it. I mean, they should go to prison regardless of what the BSL arrangement is. So did you folks have anything have any thoughts on this before we move on?
I have a couple.
Sure.
One, I remember this case quite clearly. IHG covered it, and basically what had happened, let's say the family quinceanera, it was some kind of family function, and they were walking down the street towards their vehicle, and the dogs had become very, very aggressive, and initially hopped over the fence and went after the wife. And the husband actually went in to defend her, and he succumbed to his injuries. I also remember that when they finally had news coverage on the scene, all you saw was the firefighters with axes and shovels trying to swipe at the dogs to get
Yep.
them away, when they should have been putting the dogs in the ground, because they couldn't even get to the victims because they were resource guarding.
Yep. That's
And
that photo here. Yeah, you see they get the two rescue workers with axes, basically trying to defend themselves.
thank you.
Yep.
And it's really, really sad that they had to die like that. And then the guy had the audacity of throwing up the devil horns when they handcuffed him, which was really, really disturbing. Which,
Yep.
I think people need to really start looking at this as more of a satanic thing, and something that is being controlled by forces that we don't understand. And it's really getting kind of revolting.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot more to this than this is not just some economic bubble or social fad. There's something way more insidious here. I know we've had some talks about, dogs being brood parasites. In other words, they're able to, or they've evolved the ability to exploit the nurturing instincts in humans. That may be part of it, but that's a very insidious thing also. But yeah, I'm not going to debate you. I mean, if it turns out that like the devil himself is behind this, that would not surprise me one bit. I'd be like, yeah, it makes perfect sense now.
Yeah,
It does. It would. Yep, it would. So, but anyway, it's good that they're going to prison. Hopefully, we'll see more of this. Hopefully, because this is a big gut punch to the mutt cult. right? Because typically they just do whatever they want with impunity. One thing I would add, though, is that, well, one aspect of this is the wife who survived the attack. She's suing the dog owners, but she's also suing the city for negligence. And that's something that needs to be put, injected into the public conversation also, because you have that's not uncommon. Like you look at, and I've tracked many of these cases, Clonda Ritchie, Kylene Waltman, Pam Rock, just as a few examples there. Well, Kylene survived the attack, but these are all cases like this where you had known dangerous dogs, they'd injured people prior, authorities didn't do anything, right? And then the situation escalated out of control until somebody died. And these are so preventable. Like, these dogs should have been dirt napped before the fatal attack. And they weren't. And that's something else we can approach our executives and lawmakers about, is like, particularly if a problem like this in your neighborhood, you can tell them, it's like, look, these dogs kill somebody, forget about the dog owner, the authorities, are going to be held accountable. And suing the government, I don't know what that solves by itself, because really it's just taxpayers paying for it. But it's politically very, very damaging. You tell them, it's like, look, it's going to hurt your prospects. And you know what? You look at this. I mean, it looks like this, going after these people is now, it's a very popular opinion. So like I said, this is a big white pill here. But you're right. Yeah, there's something deeply insidious about all this. It's very, very, it's pernicious. It's wicked. In any case. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What do you think about the judge's decision? The way she came across her when she dropped the gavel down, it really seemed like she was tiptoeing around it. I don't really think they are going to get more than a year or two.
Well, they might get. They're up for parole in a few years.
Say that it's bad that if someone's finally getting charged, but what is the extent of the injury? Is it going to suit the crime? No, it's not.
Well, yeah. I mean, these folk, that man was killed in the most gruesome and excruciatingly painful way imaginable. That's what I'm saying. Even like, the death penalty. I know, that's very controversial, but you could make a case that these two should get the electric chair, because you know what? That would be way better than what the victim got. But you're right, though. IHD pointed that out. The judge, she didn't really go after them. I mean, she did sentence them, so that's good. But she kind of made I didn't really watch that too closely, but I sort of had the same impression. Like, she didn't really condemn them in the way they should be, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yes, totally. Yeah. She skated around. She found the most humane way to drop her gavel. That's the best way I can say it.
Yep. Anyway, so Mr. Johnson, who's also known as IQ the Poetic. You haven't been on a call for a while. I know I've been following. You have a channel up, and it looks like you're giving, some service dog fraudsters some hell, which is good. It's always a high value effort. The more of that happens, the better. I recall the one where you're in a grocery store and some nutter, he has a pit bull just tied to the shopping cart. That thing's as fake as a $3 bill.
Yeah, that one was, what happened was, I've been in the space for a while, and most of the time it's just been on IHG and the chat rooms, conversing with you guys, with the chats and the live calls. And I've just kind of been in a space, kind of like secretly just been looking at it. And I've been trying to see a way that hasn't been approached. And this is what I came up with. No one actually has been approaching these people in public or calling them out in public for their gross negligence is what they're doing. And so I walked into Winco to get both gummy bears. And as I'm walking out with my half a pound, a quarter pound, because I don't get that many, I try to stay in shape. So I get a quarter pound. And I'm walking out of the aisle and I see this tail wagging. I'm still shocked. I'm like, that's Pitbull. And so he's walking in there and I can clearly see it's not a service dog because it's fanning its ass all over the place. It's triggered. It's looking here. It's looking there. It's looking up. It's looking down. And I started recording right when he decided to walk over, grab some treats from the boat containers, and place it on the floor for the dog to eat. I lost it. I went over to the grocery section, not the grocery, but the produce department, and I located the produce manager, and I said, hey, that guy needs to get that pit bull out of the store now.
Yeah.
I said, you go locate the manager. That is not a service dog. And what does he do? He goes, how do you know it's not a service dog? I look in plain his face. I said, well, he's feeding it.
Yeah.
It's tied to the shopping cart. It's looking all over the place. It's not a service dog, dude. Get it out of the store.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you could tell. I mean, because it's not acting the way, even superficially, the way you would expect a service dog to act. Well, first of all, any service pit bull is like guaranteed fake. It's not 99% chance. It's 100% chance. But then you look at the behavior on top of it. They go, well, how do you know it's not a service dog? It's like, okay, how do you know I'm not Taylor Swift? It's like, come on, give me a break.
Well, you know what I did? I said, well, you know what? I identify as a trillionaire, but my bank account doesn't see that.
That's reflected.
Right. So I ended up having a conversation with the manager in the front of the store because I had lost it because not only, and there's a part 2 to the video where you see the guy in the red shirt, he is the deli manager. So I had the deli manager, the produce manager, the store manager, the head of loss prevention and loss prevention all in a huddle. Now that I should have recorded. And they said verbatim, well, normally when we approach these people, they lie and say it's a service dog. And I said, and that's where this problem comes in. Yeah. And I lit up. I said, this is where this problem stops. I said, you have outside security, you have a store sign that says no pets permitted, but yet these people decide to break the law. I said, he's going to lie. I said, they always lie. And I said, but you never ask what is the task that's supposed to perform for me? You never ask the pertinent questions. So once they say it's a service animal, that's supposed to be the card, the ace, the joker. We won't say so anymore, but that's the card you pull out to shut everybody up. Yep. And it doesn't work. Then there's 2 other dogs in the store. This other guy's got a juvenile Doberman pinscher who's definitely triggered. Now, if that pit bull would have saw that Doberman pinscher, it would have been a fight. And I would have I would have recorded it for the first time in history, a dog fight in the store from a crusader. And it's going to happen soon. I don't want to into being, but it's going to happen around me. And I'm going to get it. It's going to blow up because these people have lost it.
Yeah, one thought I had was, I mean, of course, they're right because the ADA is a big loophole. All they got to do is lie about it. But still, I think that the staff should always perform their due diligence. Anytime somebody shows up with a dog, asking the 2 questions. Is this a service dog required because of a disability? And what task or work is it been trained to perform? And they can lie. That's the problem. They don't actually have to provide any proof. There's no permits or anything. But still, at least you get them on record, right? You say, okay, for the record, you say it's a service dog. It's like, okay. But then, you're right. If it starts a fight with another dog, then you've got them on record that they, lied about it, because service dogs should not be starting fights with other dogs. That's not well, maybe it is a legit task, because that's the other problem. There's no standards or stipulations as to what constitutes legit service dog activity. So maybe if it had attacked a Doberman, they say, well, it's a medical alert dog, right? When my blood sugar gets too high, it mauls another dog. That's how I know I need my insulin, right? I shouldn't laugh, but it is. It's so bad, it's good. You can't help. It's terrible. They should do their due diligence. And the store should. And if it's really obviously fake, kick them out. Let them sue you. Because apparently in court, like a judge or a defense attorney can ask for proof, and that's happened where, so they get kicked out. And, in civil court, what is it? It's preponderance of evidence. So the judge is going to say, okay, are you legit disabled? Has the dog been trained to do anything? Like, prove it. Because it says, that's what AAiH says, a staff cannot ask for proof, but a judge can, probably defense team also, because, I've been party to a couple of lawsuits, and, you can really dig into people. You can get information about them that, is normally be considered private or confidential. I'm going to digress a little, but this has come up a few times. I think it was on dogsbite.org, where a man wanted, he was applying for public housing, and the building in question had pet rules. It was like no pets over 30 pounds. But he was claiming that his pit bull was a service dog, right? It was a PTSD service dog. He claimed he was a war veteran, right? And he had severe PTSD from a result of combat experience. And he had this PTSD service pit bull, right? So the building management said, no, we don't believe you, right? So he sued them, but he lost. Because the judge asked him, it's like, okay, you claim you're a disabled war veteran. It's like, prove it. And it turns out the guy had been in the National Guard, but he'd never been in combat. He never even deployed outside the United States. But that's the kind of thing, like judges and defense teams can ask for that proof, or that's my understanding. So let them sue you. And, you can sue them right back, so. Good stuff. So you had a work situation recently. Would you like to talk about that? That seemed interesting. It was kind of, on topic.
Oh, definitely. I got fired. The nutters banded together to get me kicked out of the kitchen because I would proclaim daily that I don't like dogs. And a lot of them have had dogs or are current dog owners, and they would come up with these preposterous stories. Like one of them, Douglas, said that he has 2 German Shepherds, that they are so bougie that they don't eat feces. And if you look up the dog breeds that eat the most amounts of shit, go to pictures, and German Shepherds are number 2 on the list. So how does your dog eat shit? So, I would go at him daily. I had shirts that said, I hate dogs, pound sorry, not sorry. I'd wear in the kitchen. And so basically, and this is going to be egregious as it comes, one of the nutters decided to say that I sexually assaulted him as a male. Are you kidding me? And I told Chef, and I quote, I'm not a fucking fag, excuse my language. I said, I don't swing that way. And I said, you know better than that. So, on administrative leave, and then they tried to say I was being hostile. So I'm like, okay.
So they let you go, and the cause was that you've been sexually harassing other men.
Yeah, no, just one in particular.
Well, one in particular. Why You know, that's interesting about this is they very often go for that. Well, because you're aware of the case with IHD and that little twerp, you know, claiming that IHD is actually the offender in Florida. And I had an incident, talk about mind blowing, you know, last decade when I was blogging. Actually, I was blogging about Mick the Mauler because it was a case where a American bulldog, I mean, pit bull, mauled a kid. And there's all this, you know, controversy. Should the dog be put down and blah, blah, blah. And I was on discussing this, you know, DISQ, was it QUS or whatever, and which isn't a platform that ever went anywhere. And I said, look, Mick needs to be put down. All dogs at maul need to be put down, period. Right? None of this, because the reason we have so many dog attacks, all these second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, just like the case, it's still up on the screen, right? So somebody responds and he said, to me, he said, you're just like the guy in the black van handing out candy to kids. And I was like, where did that come from? And I wasn't even offended. It just blew my, how do you get there from what I just said? But it seems like they have, is it just the worst thing they can possibly think of? Or is it projection? Like they not always, but they often go there, that if you're somebody who's, and not even anti-dog generally, it's like, I don't think you don't have to be a dog hater to say that vicious and violent dogs should be euthanized. That's not necessarily a hateful thing. But if you're in any way critical of dogs or dog culture, in even the most common sense way, that qualifies you as some kind of perv or sex criminal or deviant. How do you get there? But yeah, it's very common. So but this is like, they did it to you like in person. So it's, I guess, shocking, but not, you know, surprising. Yeah, it's that's really unfortunate. Now, are you considering a legal remedy? Because there might be one. Again, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on television.
No, I've contacted, since, you know, California is the capital of the world, I've contacted multiple firms. A lot of them won't touch the sexual aspect, the racial aspect. They won't bark up any of those trees for verbatim for this conversation.
Yep.
But what we'll look at is the fact that California is very strict on breaks and lunches. And for the whole duration of the time I was there, I never took my breaks. So they would make sure I took my lunches, or they would send us home before we even came to our lunches. But I'm still entitled to a break. They never gave adequate breaks. So there is a propensity of a lawsuit for that. But on the other thing, I mean, all I'm going to do is sit there with my new car and my nice Rolex and dance in the parking lot when I get paid, because that's all I can basically do. I mean, when I win. The other portion of it is I can file civilly because it was a wrongful termination, even though and right to fire state. The at will still has guidelines within it to protect, even with California.
Sure. I mean, particularly if it's contrived, like if you have, you know, for example, like a coworker sabotages you somehow, you know, but then you got to, you know, ask yourself, like, I mean, if that is actionable, what do you want out of it? Do you want to get put back on? Like, do you want to, you know, go back to working there? Or do you want a settlement? Or,
you're crazy. I want to get paid.
Yeah.
I want money. You got to compensate me. You have wasted my time. You have underpaid me. You have undervalued me. You have
Yep.
treated me with less than respect. And you brought a bunch of promises that weren't real. Now, obviously, that happens everywhere, but I'm a grown ass man. Don't play that game with me.
Yep.
I come to work. I help everybody out. Everybody has a right to their opinion. I don't like dogs, and I can tell them why. And then they would sit up there and tell me it's training, or that they sense evil. And that is I love this. If they sense evil, 85%. Well, what do you mean? 85% of the victims of dog attacks are children under the age of 13. So a baby is evil, an infant is evil, a month-old is evil. I will knock all your teeth out of your mouth. Don't say that in front of me.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is that, well, usually, I mean, that's an easy argument to defeat, because you just bring in a photo of like Adolf Hitler with his dogs. I mean, if they could sense evil, why didn't they just maul him to death or run away at least, right? Because they can't. They only interact with us at the most superficial level. He gave them lots of sausage. That's why they liked him. I mean, they don't know. And, some of the most horrible people who've ever lived, infamous criminals have been dog people, and, their dogs liked them. And you can't, I mean, it's not, I mean, that's not nothing. And that's not even an anti-dog statement. You wouldn't expect them to. Sometimes you don't even expect other people to. I've always been fascinated with serial killers. And if you get into Ted Bundy, Ted Bundy, when he was running around killing people, he was married and he had a stepdaughter. And I think after he and his wife actually had a child together, but his stepdaughter, I guess she didn't know her real dad, so he was like a dad to her, and she adored him, because he treated her really well. He kept his life separate, so you can't even expect people to in a lot of cases, because, that was an aspect to him that, his wife and stepdaughter weren't aware of. But yeah, dogs can't detect. Well, I was going to say they can't detect shit. They can detect shit. They, eat it all the time. Why we call them turd burglars.
Mussolini
Well,
was a dog lover too.
Yeah, well, I'm really that's really unfortunate about the work situation, but it all kind of lines up, because you say, somebody, do you like dogs? No. Okay, well, you're a child molester, right? Or whatever, some kind of sexual deviant. I don't know how they get, and that's slanderous stuff. But I guess you said, though, that none of the attorneys out there wanted to touch that. So you got to thing too, as you do generally, it's advisable to watch what you say at work. But sometimes the dog bullies can be pretty belligerent, because I've had them go after me from time to time, even before I got into this space. Be like, do you have a dog? No. Why don't you have a dog? When are you going to get a dog? Why don't you have a dog? And of course, then I react. I say, why don't I have a dog? Because I'm not a moron. That's why, right? And then they, take, like BTFO them. Normally, though, it's like, if somebody has a dog, like whatever, like if you go into somebody's cubicle and there's a picture of the dog on their desk, I wouldn't say anything. I just ignore it. I wouldn't say, hey, what's with a turd burglar, right? You're not having sex with that shit mutt, are you? Like, that kind of stuff could be construed as creating a hostile work environment or harassment. But, if they want to start it, it's like, hell, I'll take this as far as you want to go.
Wait a minute. That's what they fired me for, creating a hostile work environment because I didn't like dogs. I'm like, are you kidding me? Who's ever been terminated for that? Like, I probably had
the thing to do is, if that's probably the thing to do is would be to tell, like, a responsible manager, it's like, okay, everybody cool it. I don't want any more discussion because about this topic. It's like any other political topic, right? If you get arguing about politics, it'd be like, let's say you get some like heated abortion debate or something. I'd be like, you know what? Just everybody knock it off. I don't want to hear another word about it. But the problem is, like a lot of dog people, they just bring that up. You know, they proselytize. You know, they go to, it's like, oh, you don't have a dog? Well, I'm going to convince you the dogs are the greatest thing ever. And it is. You know,
it was every day. Oh, they're so great. Oh, I could do this. Well, you say dogs will eat anything, they'll steal your food. Well, my dog is so trained, I could leave food, leave the room, and won't eat it. What do you say about that? I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? Out of the clear sky, dude, I don't give a fuck. I hope it eats some poison. It's so stupid. It's like,
yeah,
don't me, guy. I don't go there.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's unfortunate, but that's what they do is, and they go for the worst accusation possible, and which really shows that they don't really have an argument when they do stuff like that. So I mean, if you want to debate something on its merits, like fine, but making these kind of accusations, it's really toxic. So
No,
anyway,
it's like you provoked that dog, so you deserve not to kick it. Huh?
yeah.
No, I ain't
Provoked
trying
it
to.
how? Well, just by existing. You were taking up space that got Fido all lathered up at you. Hey, let's shift gears because Joe, I wanted to talk to you because you had an incident with a neighborhood dog recently. Did you feel comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, sure, sure. There's no problem. I'm not traumatized or anything, so that's it's actually I actually find it kind of a funny story. But first of all, hello to Mr. Johnson again. Yeah, we haven't seen each other for quite or heard each other for quite a while, and I'm thrilled to see your channel. Yeah, that's really good stuff, and I think it's actually very important to like the video evidence is always I think it's always the best thing that one can do because it's you know, I can blather as much as I want, but I think a video of 30 seconds that usually says more than 10 minutes of my blathering. But I'm still trying to actually catch some interesting stuff, you know, on video myself. But I usually just I'm not very good with that. But so cheers to you for putting up these horrific people, you know, so that everybody can see how stupid they are. And I think that's the best. That's the best we can do. So cheers for that, yeah, Mr. Johnson. And yeah, so my story, yeah, I mean the story here is that I'm actually going to publish a video about that, but only after a certain while, because I actually did file an official complaint and I'm going to press charges, and I don't want anybody here in the area to see that video before that whole procedure is through and done. Because then we all know that, you know, if any of the dog nutters here would see that video, then they would just twist it in a way that they can say, yeah, look, this guy's just a dog hater, and we all knew that he's an animal hater, and he probably just made the whole story up and everything. So I don't want to take any risks, so I'll just keep the video private for the moment. And yeah, but it'll be published in a few weeks probably. But I mean, I can tell you the story. It's actually, yeah, it's probably rather standard, like many of these stories. It was a few days ago, and I was just actually going to my mailbox. I mean, it's really banal. And there is a neighbor here across the street. He has kind of a large property and he has lots of animals. He also has goats and cats and all sorts of stuff. And he's had a dog for a long time, and that dog, I've actually never seen it, because it's somewhere, you know, it's supposed to be very old, and I think he has it, you know, tied up to, I don't know, on his porch or something. So from outside you don't see it, but we've been hearing it because it's barking like an idiot, yeah, at probably every bird or every butterfly that he sees. But yeah, so that guy lives across the street, and I've never seen the neighbors either. So they, yeah, I've I've lived here for 3 months, and I've never met them. So there was no personal grudge or anything from my side. And so I was just on my way to the letterbox, and then I realized that on the other side of the street, besides his house, there's kind of a field with a few fruit trees and grass and stuff. And there was this dog, you know, sniffing around there, walking around. It was kind of a medium-sized thing, and it was right next to the street, on the other side of the street. And then I thought that this dog belonged to some pedestrians there, or to some people who are just walking around there, and I just looked up the street and down the street because I thought the owners might be there, but there was just nobody. And the dog was around 40 meters away from me, or 35 meters. And I didn't go close to it at all. And I just really had a quick look if anybody's there actually who could be the owner, but there was nobody. And then the dog actually noticed me, and he just darted right at me. Like there was absolutely, like he didn't even wait a second or anything. He just started barking right away, and he came at me in a straight line and went right for my legs. And I tried to back off, you know, I kept an eye on it. I didn't turn my back on it, but I was walking backwards, and I tried to actually get back to my door. But I couldn't, because he just came with me, and he just moved with me together and tried to snap at my legs. And then I noticed that, okay, this is not going to work. And then I just took aim and I kicked it in the head. And I'm pretty proud of myself. I took very good aim, I have to say, and I just bang, kicked it really, really hard in the head. And it started whimpering and yelping and whining immediately, turned around and ran away. And then I saw that it ran actually over to that neighbor. And then I realized actually that this is his dog. So, because I've never seen it before, I had never seen it. So, and then it ran to the gate, and I went after it actually, because I wanted to see like if the owner is anywhere to be seen, or if the guy from that house is there. And right when the dog actually made it to the gate, then the owner came out. And he was all, you know, upset, and he was talking to the dog and asking it like, why are you outside? And what are you doing there? And what have you done? And everything. And I started, I mean, of course, I was really pissed off, and I started yelling at him, and I asked him like, is this your dog? Like, this thing is running around outside here and just randomly attacking people. Like, are you crazy? And then he started, I mean, he was pretty shaken as well. But you can imagine he started the same nonsense as you would expect from the dog nutters. Like, well, the first question he asked me was like, did anything happen to you? And I said, no, nothing happened, because I kicked it in the head, because I defended myself. And then he said, well, then what are you so upset about? I mean, if nothing happened, then why are you yelling at me? And I mean, that just angered me even more, of course, because if I hear such a shit reply, then I mean, if that was my dog, I mean, I would be so embarrassed that I would go down to my knees and I would say, sorry, really, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot, and it's never going to happen again. Yeah, it's not your fault. It's totally my fault. And so we actually started arguing there. And the excuse that he had was pretty funny. The excuse he had was that like around a week ago, there was quite a storm here in, like, it was all over Austria actually. We had really severe weather and severe rain, severe storms, floodings, everything. And he said, well, you know, the storm knocked over one of my fences. And it seems that that's the reason why the dog got out. And then I said, yeah, but that storm was several days ago. And I mean, you know that, like, everybody here in the area knows him and everybody knows the dog. And that dog has already attacked other people as well previously. So, like, why is it the storm now? Like when it attacked, when there were the other incidents, like there was no storm. So, like, why are you blaming the storm now? And I mean, anyway, you know that your dog is vicious. So if you see that your fence got damaged, then why don't you just keep the dog inside? I mean, you know that it's going to attack people. But yeah, look, and then his excuse was, yeah, but you know, the dog is really old and it's basically blind and deaf anyway. And I said, yeah, well, that wasn't my impression. I mean, it's
They
I
could
mean,
obviously they could see well enough to, you know, plot a trajectory straight towards you.
exactly, yeah. I mean, I mean, I told you, I think I told you that, look, if that's what that dog can do, if it is blind and basically deaf, then I don't want to see what it can do actually with two functioning ears and two functioning eyes. I mean, it has a surprising speed. It came at me from around 35 meters in a straight line. And apparently it also, obviously, it did hear me from 35 meters away, although I didn't make a sound. You know, I was just standing there and looking left and right. So, and, you know, even if it was true, you know, even if it was true, how is that an excuse? I mean, it is still aggressive and it is still attacking people. So, I mean, what am I supposed to say then? Oh yeah, okay, it's an old dog. Well, therefore, I will volunteer to get myself mauled. So
Yeah.
what's the logic there? I really don't see it.
Well, there isn't any. I mean, it's just so what? Like, who cares how old it is? Well, the thing is, if
Yeah.
it were a younger dog, I'd say, oh, well, it's just a puppy, right? So it's just a puppy, and then it's a dog it's either too young to know what it's doing or it's too old to know what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's an argument they can't lose. So, but you mentioned also the dog had, I guess, attacked a mail carrier.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a story that I actually heard from my girlfriend because she she's been living here for several years and she knows the area pretty well. And she told me that that dog has attacked the postman twice, and one time also a school child. And the funny thing was about the, I mean, I don't know any details about the school child, but she said that apparently with the postman, the owner of the dog, they just paid the postman off so that he can get his uniform fixed because I think the dog tore his pants apart or something. And they also gave him a little extra money so that he's not going to press charges or to file a complaint, you know.
Gave him some hush money. I wonder if that's legal, you know, to pay
Yeah,
somebody not
yeah,
to
that's
file a
good
report.
question. Yeah, good question.
I mean, you could argue it's some kind of settlement, I guess, you know, but if the act is criminal, you know, can you just pay somebody? Again, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but that's really sketchy. And you know what? If I were the postman, I would take the money and then report it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought the same actually.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's ridiculous. Yeah, but the thing is that you know, after that little exchange that we had with the owner, or I had with the owner, I actually went back, you know, to our apartment, and I told the story to my girlfriend, and I asked her like, what would you think if I called the police actually? Because what I was thinking was that, I mean, the kick was really, I mean, it was really heavy. Yeah, I mean that thing got what it deserved, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, if it got at least a concussion, or even, it could even have internal bleeding, and that could have much more severe consequences. And what I was worried about is that, if he has to take the dog to the vet, and the dog has some serious problem, then he's probably going to file a complaint against me for animal abuse.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought,
I was going
yeah,
to say,
go
yeah,
on.
that's smart, because I think that, I don't know, I mean, at least here, like the default assumption of authorities is whoever calls the police first is the victim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I thought as well. And then I just said, I'm actually going to do that. So I'm going to call the police, and and just see what we can do. And I did, and they came out rather quickly, and they took it very seriously. Yeah, so I really have to give props to the police again. And so 3 officers came to pay us a visit, and I explained what happened, and like they were very appreciative. So they took it really seriously, and it was interesting that actually one of the one of the officers even told me that, like, kind of between us, he said, my God, I'm really sick of these dog owners now. I mean, he said that this has really increased massively in the last few years, and he said that we really have other stuff to do than take care like 3 or 4 or 5 times every week, and go out because of some stupid idiot that doesn't know how to handle his dog. And so that didn't even come from my side, and I didn't say that I hate dogs or anything, but it was really, you could really see that they are tired of this nonsense. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he said, or they said to me, look, we are going over to your neighbor and we are going to confront him about this. And they also said that they actually, that neighbor, that they actually know him. And so they know that this is not the first time that others had problems with him. And when I told them his name, then they said, "Oh yeah, this guy again." Yeah. So apparently, I'm not the first one who ran into trouble with him. And yeah, they said, "Okay, look, we are going over and we are going to talk, trying to talk some sense into him. But would you like to file a complaint?" Yeah. So they asked me if I want to take any measures, and I asked them like what does that mean? I mean, what do I have to do, and what kind of consequences is it going to have? And they said, well, look, you can just file a private complaint. Basically, they will write up the story, and the only thing that I will have to do is I will have to appear in the county capital here, in our county, and go to the police station there, and I have to provide an official testimony that I will sign, and they will type it up, and that'll be all that I have to do. And so the other guy will have to pay a fine, or I don't know if he already has several complaints. Then I mean, it's kind of a cumulative effect. So the fines get higher, or like I think at some point he probably even has to surrender the dog. But I mean, I don't know if anybody else has already reported him or not. I don't know. But
Yeah. Well, that's
then
why
I
it's
said,
always
yeah,
good.
let's do that. So
Yeah, it's always good to report, because they don't. You could say, well, what's the point? They're probably not going to do much, if anything. But you're right; it's cumulative. Like they get enough complaints, they being authorities, really, if it's from different people, eventually they'll do something. And it also helps, like a case, well, the one that's still up on the screen, where if you have somebody who's killed or badly injured, that gives, that well, that person or their estate like some recourse, because they can't stand there and say, oh, well, you know what, it never behaved dangerously before, because they always point to reports, right? They say, well, there's nothing, there's no paper trail, right? And probably because a lot of times, people know as it reporting, it often doesn't accomplish much, but it's still good to do it because it gets the paper trail going. It takes a lot of those excuses away from them, both the dog owner and authorities. You can say, look, there have been multiple like formal complaints about this. What are you going to do? And then eventually off. And now, unfortunately, in some cases, the authorities are so negligent that they don't do anything until somebody's killed, unfortunately. But still, because that's what they want. That's what our adversary wants. They want people to just be totally, discouraged from doing anything.
Yeah.
So, and don't give them that, because that's what they want. They want people to give up. It's like, okay, I'm just going to like somehow manage to live in dog hell. But no, give them hell. So yeah, prosecute it to the fullest extent, which might not amount to much, but but it might, but also it might. And even if it doesn't help you, it might help the next person, because particularly if you are the next person, right? Because you could say, okay, this third time the dogs attack me, if you'd reported it, that not you, but proverbial you, right? If it had been reported prior, maybe there's more that could have been done. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought exactly the same. Yes. So I mean, I also thought, look, I mean, I cannot go on these voice chats and have a channel about dog awareness, and then if something happens, then I'll just sit at home and bitch about it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the legal route. Yeah, of course, it's work and it's tedious and everything, and it costs time. But look, I mean, if we want to be taken seriously, you just have to do it. I mean, look, you cannot wait for somebody else to do it. And especially, I think this guy, I mean, I was very encouraged actually by the police officers. I mean, that even one of them told me that, oh my God, like these dog owners, really, I'm fed up with them. Yeah. And you even hear it from the police officers. I mean, if already like the police is on your side, or the police are on your side, I mean, then, I mean, what else do you want? I mean, then I think your chances are pretty good. I mean,
yeah. Well, the other thing too is there's definitely, we have allies or at least sympathizers in authority. Maybe one reason they don't want to react is maybe they're just overwhelmed. It's like they're just constantly getting calls about dogs. And they're sick of it. But the problem is that the system, like say, gives the dog owners and the dogs themselves way too much leeway. Like often there's not much you can do about it, and then they can do about it. So even when they follow, and they prosecute to the fullest extent, the problem is that extent doesn't amount to much. But that's the place where like those people can agitate for better laws, better protocols, fewer protections for the dog owners, just like any citizen can. I think where Sheepy is that they because she's called the cops on her nutter neighbors probably at least a couple of times, and they have some sympathy also, because they say you think, I think they told her, I don't want to speak for her, but you wouldn't, like they said, like her county sheriff, you wouldn't believe how many calls I get about dogs. Because it's a huge problem. And you're right, really what needs to be done is after the second or third complaint, the dogs need to be removed and they need to be banned from having more. Because, it's all about irresponsible owners, right? So allowing your dog to run at large and attack 3 different people on 4 separate occasions that we know of, I'm talking about your case, Joe, It sounds like he's pretty irresponsible to me. And you got the barking on top of that. So that's another problem. So yeah, they keep talking about irresponsible owners. It's like, well, sounds like we got ourselves an irresponsible owner right there. So yeah, they should have their pet privileges removed. These people here, yeah, they've been banned from owning pets for life, but yeah, like part of the problem is who's going to follow up on that, particularly if they move out of the area. But still, every little bit helps. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
we wanted to, yeah, that's an interesting story. So hopefully get some relief there. It turns out though, isn't the dog owner a local politician?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I told you. So I actually found out, or my girlfriend told me that he is, or at least he was a member of the city council here, and he's still a member of the Green Party. So the Green Party here in Europe, I mean, I'm not quite sure how it is in the United States, but the Green Party here in European countries is all about, the environment and, save the planet and climate change and everything. And yeah, look, that's totally fine. But this guy is, yeah. So I thought it's kind of funny because I'm having a hard time taking people seriously who want to save the planet, but at the same time they're not even able to save their own fence.
Yeah,
So it's
they can't.
it's kind of
Yeah, I want to
yeah.
say, but I think it's worth, pointing out. And I don't want to get into like a big, partisan political debate, but it's probably worth, particularly if somebody is actually either in politics or is a political activist, to point out the hypocrisies there, because dogs are a disaster for the environment in all kinds of ways. Like they piss and shit, they piss and shit all over everything, befouling the soil and water. They bark and destroy the acoustic environment. They harass and attack wildlife. They consume, ridiculous amounts of meat that, contributes to, deforestation. Even if they didn't eat, even if they're a vegetarian, it's like you've got all this, probably a third of the world's food supply goes down their gullets.
Yeah.
And, so you think, there's always trade-offs. Like, I'm more a conservationist than an environmentalist, but there's always trade-offs to be made. Like, they say, okay, maybe gas-fired power plants, aren't the greatest thing for the environment, but there's a trade-off of cheap energy, which is a social good. So you got to balance those things. But in the mutt space, you have the same kind of problems, but without sort of the countervailing benefits, right? So we have all this, again, the noise pollution, dog attacks, which contribute to healthcare costs and other problems. All the the toxic piss and shit everywhere. Did I say barking? Well, barking's always good. I'll mention it twice. The consumption of meat. I want to share something real quick. It's kind of, I'm going off on a tangent, but something came up on, actually it was on banned pit bulls. So there was, I should have saved the link for this. Let me see if I can find this. There was an oopsie litter of wolf pit bull, hybrids spawned. Where is that? Is that on this page? I got to find that. The real reason, blah, blah, blah. Dog sitting, pit bull. Maybe they deleted it. I should have saved it, but you should have seen these things. Talk about what you were saying, Johnson, about like, the hounds from hell. These are pit bull, like wolf crosses, and they literally look like something out of a horror movie. They're just terrifying. something and they're like, oh, look at this sweet little fur babies. They're just wonderful. They're just totally awesome. Why can't I find that? But that's let's see, pit bulls kill elderly man. Owner of pit bull. I don't know. Maybe I'll just link it in the chat section. But yeah, it comes out that these things, each of these dogs is eating like 3 to 4 pounds of meat per day. Each of them. And thinking like, yeah, how like ridiculously wasteful is that? Now, normally, you know, I'm a meat eater. I have a cat that eats meat, although she doesn't eat anywhere near that amount. 3 or 4 pounds would probably feed her for a month. But also I'm not one of these hardcore environmental activists either. Right. So, you know, it's probably worth pointing out that, you know, the hypocrisies there. It's like you say, OK, well, yeah, dude, like what's with the shit mud? Like those things are terrible. They're terrible for the environment. And but somehow, it was one of my peer bloggers last decade, somehow dog culture, at least in some spaces, has sort of aligned itself with sort of the naturalist movement. Like they say, well, a dog will bring you closer to Mother Gaia somehow. And again, I know they make that connection. That's just as dumb as like accusing every dog critic of being a child molester. But I know that came up, but yeah, they're not good for the environment. They're a disaster for the environment in a lot of ways. And, you know, it's like, well, it's irresponsible owners. Like, so what? It's still a disaster. I don't want to, like, you know, it'd probably be interesting to have like a breakout conversation on that, right? But just sort of on the hypocrisies, not just from the you know, in this space, left-wing dog nutters and also right-wing dog nutters. I know you wanted to have a discussion about, you know, self-defense, but so anyway, we've identified ways that, well, particularly the environmental left dog nutters are very hypocritical. You also see it on, you know, right-leaning dog nutters also, because they promote things like, say, property rights, but they completely trash the property rights of everybody around them. So they're hypocritical on that. And, you know, on self-defense rights, like I was going to ask you, like, okay, like what? No animal cruelty charge for kicking the dog that was trying to eat you. But that comes up often also because you have, particularly in the U.S., you know, one, you know, big issue for right-leaning people are self-defense rights, like Second Amendment and stand your ground laws and so forth. Not exclusively. Many left-leaning people support that also, but that's a big issue for them. But it seems like, okay, if kicking or stabbing or shooting the dog that's attacking you, or another person perhaps, isn't a legitimate expression of self-defense rights, what is? But those very same people be like, oh, you should go to prison for that. But these are the same people who think who supposedly hypocritically promote self-defense rights. So that's worth pointing out also. So did you want to segue into some self-defense discussions, as you had a self-defense scenario the other day?
Yeah, well, if you don't mind.
It's always very topical. You know, when I started blogging, I would get asked about that a lot. And this was, you know, like early last decade, and people would ask me about it. And it's funny because I go to these, like, information, you talk about like self-defense. I mean, typically it would involve self-defense against another person, or perhaps a wild animal, like what to do if you're hiking and you're attacked by a bear, which like almost never happens. But like against dogs, there was big fat goose egg. There was nothing, because I guess that the consensus was, again, yeah, dogs are all these perfect and pure fur babies sent from heaven. Like there's no such thing as a self-defense scenario against the dog, because they're all totally benevolent, right? That's why we have all these dog attacks. So, Anyway, sorry, proceed.
Not at all, not at all. Yeah, no, I mean, the self-defense aspect is also a topic that that has been in my head for quite a while. And I mean, I made a video about it myself, and which turned out to be pretty long, actually. And I know that, for instance, a chef made an absolutely fantastic video about self-defense against dogs, and also some other content creators. But you know, it is something that I actually think is unfortunately a little bit neglected in our space. And yeah, I mean, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that too, you know. But I think we should also talk a bit more about that. And also, the problem is always, or I mean, I have to speak about myself. But the problem is always that, I mean, I like to talk about this stuff, but then in the end, like everybody tends to think that it's not going to happen to me, you know. So like we talk about all these attacks, and you know, we all watch IHD and we analyze these attacks, but it's funny that subconsciously probably most people think that, yeah, you know, but this is not going to happen to me for some reason. Yeah. And you know, that is wrong. You know, this thinking is just wrong. I mean, I can speak from experience that it is wrong. I mean, it's not the first time that I had trouble with a dog. It happened to me several times in Hungary, and the thing is that this happens. It can happen much quicker than anybody would expect. And you know, it's nice to talk about to have endless discussions about which weapon is the best against the dog, and how can you know, which pepper spray is the best brand and everything. But you know, in that situation, like, yeah, you really have to know what you do. And like, I'm actually guilty of that too. I made two big mistakes actually in that situation. The first mistake was that I just presumed that the dog would not attack me because it's far away. So that was a big mistake. Yeah, because yeah, it turned out to be wrong. And the second mistake was that I didn't, you know, when I actually saw the dog loose there, I should have gone back to our apartment, and I should have. The problem is I was wearing sandals, and I actually went on about the footwear, like in my own video, you know, in my own video, that how important it actually is, or it can be, to have solid footwear if you are attacked. And I should have gone back and just put on my army boots and probably even take out a pepper spray or something, but I didn't. And that was a clear mistake, you know. So in the end, I kicked it in the head. And I mean, good, I had very good aim and everything, but I mean, if I had worn my army boots, then that thing's head would have burst into 5 pieces. And yeah, so I have to admit that I didn't follow my own advice. So next time I'm going to do several things differently. And like, you know, the self-defense thing is also that, you know, people, of course, like to go on about the legal aspect of the self-defense situation, which is of course important. You know, I'm not saying that this is not important, but if you actually are in such a situation, and you know, I mean, this dog was not, it was not life-threatening. I mean, it was not that big, and I don't think it could have killed me. But look, if you are in a life-threatening situation, then in that moment, you're not going to think about the legal consequences. I mean, I think your life is more important than the legal consequences, and then you're just going to use any means available.
Yep.
And even if it means you will, of course, you will probably be charged with animal cruelty or whatever. But hey, rather that than, you know, losing an arm or losing a leg.
Yep.
So, and I mean, I was also a bit surprised that, like when I did my research on the self-defense, it's unbelievable what kind of rubbish advice you can actually find on YouTube regarding self-defense against dogs. Like there's so many dangerous videos out there with absolutely trash advice and complete nonsense. And I think we should also point that out a little bit, yeah, because you know when push comes to shovel, then the thing is not complicated in the end. You know, like in the United States, if you carry a gun, then I would not even hesitate a second to actually use it, like even against a medium-sized dog. And you know, we can talk about the legal consequences. Yeah, that's a different topic, but here in Europe, you're not allowed to carry guns. I mean, basically nobody has a gun here. But also, you know, I carry a knife personally, so next time I will not hesitate a second to actually take out my knife, and even if that thing is 40 meters away. So yeah, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, Mr. Johnson, as well? Sorry, I hope you're not asleep already because of my blathering.
That's all right. You know, I mean, one thought I had to, you're right. A lot of the advice is trash, and you got to watch out for conflicts of interest. You know, this space is very, very corrupt. So, like, for example, and I've seen this before, and even some people in our space have reported on it. They say, okay, well, the best self-defense tool or to use against the dog is a fire extinguisher, like a fire extinguisher. But that's the thing, is that I won't say who it was, but initially that advice was coming from somebody who's an animal rights activist, right? As an animal advocate. So they're not concerned for your safety. They want to spare the dog's life, right? They don't want you doing something that might put Rover down for good. So you got to watch. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to carry a fucking fire extinguisher everywhere. Like, yeah, like, no, I'm not. So yeah, that's, I mean, if there's one available, like, yeah, if you're in, say, a store, right, and a dog starts attacking somebody and there's a fire extinguisher on the wall next to you, I guess you can try it. If there happens to be one within reach, but a fire extinguisher as a self-defense tool is a complete joke. Like, forget it. So absolutely. I'm not saying don't use it. I mean, yeah, if you have one within reach, fine. But yeah, that's really bad advice. And it's the advice it's given, because remember, the people who recommend that are these animal advocates, right? They want the dog to walk away after mauling somebody or trying to. So you got to watch out for that. And also, you know, self-defense generally. I know, like, for example, the dog-free Reddit doesn't allow self-defense discussion. And actually, I have an inside track on that. I'm not a mod, but I have sort of an inside track on that. And I guess, you know, they decided to make that rule. And as you know, it's their forum. They can set the tone any way they want. And, you know, self-defense discussions, there's a lot of nuance there. And if you don't, it can get pretty gnarly, right? It can really get out of hand. So you got to watch that. I mean, none of us are, but you always got to keep that in mind also, that you got to watch you don't get, because self-defense laws, and I've done some vlogs on it, and what's interesting, or what's like insane, is that, you know, the actual self-defense laws in many US states, like in my state, I'm protected by what they call, there's castle doctrine and stand your ground laws. And what that means is I don't have a legal requirement to surrender to or escape from a violent criminal. So, like, for example, let's say, you know, I'm just propped up in bed reading, and some lunatic with a chainsaw and a hockey mask comes crashing through my bedroom window. So what that means is I can shoot him, because clearly it's somebody behaving very dangerously. I'm not required to try to escape the house. I can't just surrender. I'm normally required to surrender to him. I can shoot him, and claim, and the thing is, like, stand your ground and castle doctrine, they're affirmative defenses. They're not automatic get out of jail free cards. So if that were to happen, it would be, I might be arrested, maybe not. It would be thoroughly investigated because, the police are going to look for, was there any intent there? I mean, was this truly a stranger ambush, or was it some kind of setup? Like what actually happened here? But ironically, and I pointed this out in a vlog, is that those laws don't protect me when I'm attacked by a dog. So if you replace lunatic with a chainsaw with, say, a pit bull, and home invasion attacks are not that uncommon. We were discussing that privately the other day. So let's say a pit bull or pit bulls crash through my bedroom window. It's like, first of all, escape is stupid. You're not going to outrun the dog. It's not going to happen. So if I shoot them, I'm not protected by those laws. Now, like I said, where the nuance comes in, the state law doesn't say I can't do it. So I'm not like automatically going to prison, but I can't claim protection because the stand your ground laws apply to, incidents involving other human beings. Now, there's also some exceptions for like wildlife. Like, let's say if you're hiking and if I'm hiking and I'm attacked by a bear, there's some specific protections there also. I mean, normally if you shoot, hunting of bears is legal, but it's very, very restricted. So if someone shoots a bear out of season, say, because it has to be in season, you have to be licensed hunter, and you have to have a bear tag issued by the state Game and Wildlife Agency. Now, if you don't have all that, you can be hit with a poaching charge, not animal cruelty, poaching. And that has some fairly steep penalties. But usually there's an exception. Like if the bear is trying to maul you, right? Then, you can, provided you can kind of, like, you got claw marks all over your body, they'll waive the poaching penalty. So, yeah, there's a lot of nuance there. You need to know what the laws are. As far as methods, I mean, yeah, just use whatever's probably whatever's most effective and is legal. Johnson, yeah, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I know, I think you're a 2A guy. What are your thoughts on this?
On which subject?
We're talking about self-defense against dogs.
Oh, well, that comes up. That happened to me. And I think I remember we talked about this some time ago. I was riding my board before I got my vehicle to go to the bus stop. And this Indian guy, had a German Shepherd. He no longer lives there. And I saw the dog foraging through one of the neighbors' yard. And I know he was going to charge me because I had my skateboard. So I flipped my board up and I started calling out. I was like, hey, whoever's dog this is, you need to come get your dog. You're not supposed to have it out without a leash anyways. And right when I said that, the dog noticed me and then he started barking and charging. And I just said, screw that shit. I just popped my knife out and said, let's do this. And then all of a sudden he came scampering from the garage talking about, oh, no, no, no. I was like, well, you better come get your dog or it's getting shanked.
Yep.
And he was trying to call to it, but that voice command shit don't work. So the dog just tried circling me. So I just kept eye contact with that dog because I wasn't going to let it come behind me. Much like Joe said, you don't want to let it come up behind you because it will attack, because that you showing weakness. And so he finally wrangled the dog up and put it in the garage. I think the garage had to be like 6 inches from the ground when I decided to proceed away. The fucker came shooting out at me again. And I'm all like, well, what did it do? It crawled under the fucking door. Like you said, and like IHD said, they will crawl, dig, hop, leap through, whatever they got to do. They are intent on getting to you, they will.
Yep.
So then I was like, okay, well, your dog's going to get offed. And he came at me, and I tried to hit him with my longboard, and I think I clipped him. And he kind of like shook it off real quick and thought about it. And then he ran off to the park and to the playground where children were. And I said, so you're just going to let your dog go? And he started running, and he like threw his hands in the air and went home. I was like, wow, these fucking people don't care.
They don't.
Good God.
Yeah, I was having some thoughts on, you talk about using different, whether you're bare hands or different, weapons solutions. That it's funny because you see these dog attack videos. There's like with that Ian Price video. That was a man who was mauled to death in the UK. Or some of these where everybody's just kind of standing around and they're not really doing much. They're just not, they're not all being all that effective. There's the edge of your skateboard, like even because you got to think about, okay, what's within reach that I could use? Actually, a skateboard actually wouldn't be. You like whack that thing, just hit it on the head as hard as you can. That'll probably, definitely deter him. It'll ruin Fido's day, I would think. But that's what's interesting is that, because, what do we got guns, knives, chemical weapons like pepper spray, blunt instruments, body parts like Joe's talking about. If you have, heavy boots or heavy shoes on, you can stomp them. What's interesting, though, it seems like that many people, they don't, if you're going to hit them or stab them, do it like you mean it, right? Don't just kind of swat at them. Because I'm thinking if you really hit them hard, that'll take them down, same thing like with, or, if you're using body parts, you just punch them or kick them, but really put your weight into it. One of my grandfather's college buddies was a boxer. It's like Golden Gloves, not pro or anything, but he says, when you punch somebody, you act like you're punching through them, right? Like almost like you're trying to hit something on the other side. So like if you're going to whack a dog with a wrench, say, or a piece of lumber, a 2x4, I would say to just really almost like you're chopping firewood, right? You want to wham, just like right through it. That's effective. But with other weapons, like say knives or guns, if you are, if you do have a firearm within reach and you're forced to shoot, you would aim for center of body mass, the chest area, the thorax, something cute like, and they teach you this because there was mandatory, at least at the time, there was mandatory handgun training for people seeking carry permits in my state. And I always tell you, if you are forced to shoot, you aim for center of body mass for a few reasons. One is it's a vital area. You're also much more likely to get a hit. Like some people say, well, shoot him in the foot or the arm or something. And as an instructor says, like, what, forget about that. You can't shoot that well, so just forget it, particularly on something that's moving. So the same thing like with a headshot. It's like they have very small brains. Their heads are sloped and round. So, the bullet could ricochet off their skull, for example. So I would say, yeah, center of chest area, center of body mass, right? If you're going to use a firearm. If you're going to use a knife, I would go for the neck area. And actually, there was an incident, I mentioned this before, just at the end of my block here, it was last decade, but a man was walking his dog and he was attacked by 2 off-leash pit bulls. And actually, he was able to fight them off. Here's what he did. One dog attacked him, the other attacked his dog. So he grabbed the dog by the neck And you know, he basically put a stranglehold on him, and what that does is it stops a blood flow to the brain, and it'll cause the subject to pass out, to faint, right? Probably if you hold it long enough, they'll die. So he choked the dog that was attacking him until it passed out. And this other dog is mauling his dog. So he's got a knife. He takes his knife. He cuts the other dog's throat. But again, it's like with punching or hitting. You want to get in there, really put your weight into it, like cut really deep and get those arteries open. You do that, and that thing's going to pass out from not necessarily blood loss, but if you get those arteries open, their blood pressure drops to almost zero. Again, it's almost like with the strangling. The blood comes out of the brain and they pass out pretty quickly. I mean, it'll end it in probably less than 10 seconds, provided you do it properly. If you just scratch them up, it's not going to do anything. You get that, cut deep, get those arteries open. And a good thing about that too is like that dog went down and didn't get up. Now the one that he'd strangled did. It recovered and ran off. But the dog, the dog he cut with a knife, yeah, because you cut those arteries open, it's going to die. And it's going to pass out and die. Then you don't have to worry about it, and then there's no more like rehoming or any of that crap, right? So that stuff. It's like, yeah, let's
ashes.
Oh, sorry, what'd you say?
I said you can rehome the ashes.
Yeah. Well, it's like, remember my vlog on the best use for a dead pit bull? It's like, hey, if the owner doesn't want him back, let's have a barbecue later, or cut it up for fish bait or something. Yeah, you got to, you can't let that thing go to waste. I mean, okay, if if eating dog isn't your thing, you've got fish bait, compost. You could probably render them into biodiesel. Talk about that's carbon neutral. You could use them as a shooting target. There's all kinds of solutions. So yeah, it's firearms, blunt instruments. Like if it's a blunt instrument, and you always got to be careful that, because every once in a while you hear about a story where often as a firearm, maybe some other weapon is used, that the victim is injured further. So you got to watch out for that. But that's what I say too. If the dog is attacking somebody else, I would get in there with a knife. Now, dog people say, well, you can, choke them, like take your belt off and, get behind him and choke him up. But I'm like, screw that. Just cut its throat, because it'll stop the attack in about the same amount of time, and it ain't going to get up. So, because that's the problem, like we were talking about. There's a lot of bad faith actors in this space. I mean, not on our side, I'm just talking about the overall dog space, who their thing is, okay, the best way to stop a dog attack is to, basically do whatever you have to do to preserve the dog's life. And to me, to us, it's like, that's the last thing I'm concerned with. So, and also too, you don't want to use any more force than is necessary. I had an issue while hiking a couple of years ago where I almost shot an off-leash pit bull. I had a pit bull charge me on a hiking trail. The owner couldn't see me, and I actually drew the pistol and pointed at him, and I yelled. That's what you could do. You could use your voice as a weapon. And that's what they tell you to do. Like if somebody's attacking you, provided you have an opportunity to do so, as you can, you present and you yell, stop. Right. And if they don't turn into a statue or retreat, then you can, go ahead, but, proceed with the pew pew. But I presented the weapon. I yelled stop. And I've been in these situations before where if you just yell at them, often that's enough to deter them. I say often. And, not everybody as I say, like all these solutions aren't necessarily a good choice for everybody. You know, like I said, there's a ton of nuance here. But if you're like me and you have a big booming, a very powerful voice, you can use that to your advantage also. Because usually you don't want to use, well, I guess we're talking about a dog, but typically you don't want to use violence unless you really have to. But, and of course, then you get into the chemical weapons, like such as pepper spray. And I know, Joe, you and we were looking at those. What are those called? They're like, I think it's called a Barna or something. Let me take a look at that. You can still see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I haven't been able to see your screen ever. It's just been blank.
Oh, that's all right. As long as I guess it goes. Yeah, so Barna pepper projectiles. This is an interesting. Now, a lot of times it was like pit bulls. Oh, that's just this is the ammunition. So apparently SD pepper, right. So this is, it's a pistol-like device that shoots these pepper balls, right? They're balls of, or projectiles that are made up of this chemical. So when it hits something, it creates a cloud of, irritating material. So, and they're propelled by these CO2 cartridges. Actually, I have a BB pistol. It's kind of like this, but it shoots those round copper, those 17 caliber copper projectiles. And actually, it's kind of, I use that because if I want to do a little pew pew in my backyard, I can do that because they don't make a lot of noise. The neighbors don't hear it. And also, there's not a lot of energy. I don't have to worry about it ricocheting off of something and like going through the wall of the neighbor's house or anything. But they're projected by these CO2 cartridges. It's a compressed CO2 gas. The thought I'd had though is that is a pepper ball a stable projectile? I mean, I don't know. I kind of think no, because usually to have a stable projectile, you want something heavy. That's why like bullets are typically made out of lead, because a heavy projectile has, tends to have a more stable trajectory, particularly if there's a spin on it, because, firearm barrels typically are rifled. They got spirals, etched into the inside of the barrel. So the bullet comes out, it's actually spinning. Almost like it's like a drill bit, basically, coming out that stabilizes a projectile. And some of these air guns are like that also. So I'm thinking how, part of the problem is if you shoot somebody from 5 feet away, you're liable to get some of this also, right? You're be injured by this also because it could come back at you. So, yeah, I don't know. And if anybody has one of these or has tried it, I might be interested just in shooting one to see, because you would definitely want to train and practice with it first. You'd want to go out in the backyard, set up some targets and plink some rounds to get a feel for it. But yeah, you don't want to be too close to it, and that's a problem with these really any chemical weapon too, is the wind could blow it back on you. It's a little sketchy. But I have pepper spray, and going back to you were saying, Joe, they basically have a can of pepper spray on me at all times, not necessarily a handgun, but that at least. So yeah, I don't know if anybody had any thoughts on one of these.
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember we talked about that, and I will actually have to have a look into these, because I'm also not quite convinced about the pepper option, because it's for the reasons that you actually mentioned. So I would actually, if it's legal in Austria, then I would actually rather opt for the BB pistol with the copper projectiles. And yeah,
Yeah,
I
well, the
think
thing is that a BB pistol though is that it's not. Well, so, it's interesting about air guns, and it's kind of a loophole in our firearms laws that, at least in in most states, I think every state except New Jersey, like a BB gun is just a toy, right? It's not, they're not regulated by the ATF. There may be some, maybe they can only be sold to 18 and over or whatever. But the thing is that, I don't know how effective something like that, like in like my BB pistol, would be against, like, say, an attacking dog, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would hurt like hell. But particularly if you have, like, saying it, well, interesting, like a pit bull, attacking pit bulls often are not deterred by pepper spray.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
you have to basically use, it's true even with some of those other murder mutts like Corsos, you need lethal force, like a knife or an actual firearm that can really do a lot of damage to its target. But what's interesting, though, is that air gun technology has improved a lot the last 10 or 15 years, because I've been looking into some other options. Mainly because they're quieter, right? But now they've got these, or really they're long guns, they're rifles, but they have these carbon fiber compressed air tanks, and you get a special air compressor that charges these things to like 3,000 pounds per square inch. And guys are hunting, they're actually hunting large game with these things. Like, they're taking down like hogs and deer and the like. And I think, like, again, if you can take down a deer or a hog, I mean, then you could definitely take out a dog. Like, if it'll kill one of these feral hogs, it'll totally kill a dog, 100%.
Yeah.
Again, long guns are pretty awkward self-defense weapons, and there's probably rules, like, even if you're allowed to own one, can you just walk around everywhere with one? It's like, I don't know. But yeah, I thought this was interesting. But yeah, like my BB pistol, I don't think it would really be all that effective. Like I said, it would hurt like hell, but even if, like, say, 22 long rifle, that'll really tear something up, and a shot to center a body mass can be incapacitating. I was actually did a blog write up on the effectiveness of basically different ammunition types, in firearms. Because, again, people are asking me about it. And I actually linked to there was an FBI study done. It was, I think, a 17-year study on one-shot stops, right? Because if you're going to, again, you want your self-defense article to be as effective as possible. And you don't really have a lot of time to react, right? So what they did was and it's not just one shot, not just for civilian self-defense, but even law enforcement, because the FBI and other law enforcement agencies here have kind of been playing sort of a musical chairs with handguns, because they were using .357 Magnum and 9mm and 10mm and 40 caliber, and then they went back to 9mm and blah 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 blah. So, and this is interesting in the space for a lot of reasons. So you want, like, you want your self-defense article to be as effective as possible, or even your offense article. So, like, if you're a cop and you're in a gunfight with a criminal, you want those shots to really count, right? So they did this 17-year study, I believe, and they're evaluating one-shot stops. They said, what handgun caliber is the most effective at a one-shot stop? Meaning that if you shoot, and again, this is on human beings, if you shoot somebody, how likely is that to stop them from doing what they're doing? right? Not necessarily kill them, but at least make them ineffective, right? One shot stops. And they did this exhaustive study, and what they found out was that the most effective handgun in common use and and ammunition type for a one shot stop was a 357 Magnum, specifically loaded with 125 grain hollow points. That was, I mean, I'm talking about guns in common use, like something like what, I don't know, a 600 nitro or whatever. Like, forget about that. This is something that would be in common use by law enforcement or military or perhaps civilians. So they said that that was the most effective. It was like 96% of the time you got a one shot stop out of that. And they rated all the other ones. I think 40 caliber was number 2. I think maybe take that with a grain of salt, but I'm thinking like, yeah, like my BB pistol. I don't think so. You can think about that too. So if you shoot Rover center of body mass with a 357 Magnum, that's very, very likely to put the dog down. And provided you get good shot placement, Rover's going down and he ain't getting up.
Yeah.
And there's trade-offs there too. But like I said, some of these new like air guns, although probably at some point the regulations will catch up to them, they'll be regulated the same as firearms, particularly if they're as powerful as. So, but that's good like info, because talking about all firearms are not created equal. You need good shot placement, obviously. I mean, I do some hog hunting, but that's with a full power center fire rifle. But yeah, if I shoot the hog like that, like center of body mass, boom, they just drop. They just flop right over. Done. Provided I get good shot placement, right? So, that's worth, because, those rifle cartridges are way more powerful than, handgun cartridges. Like, for example, like the 357 Magnum will have, say, 600 foot-pounds of energy, but a 243 Winchester has like 1900. So that 243 Winchester it's like three 357 Magnums going off at once. So, and that's not even like, that's less energy than like a 308, which is less energy than a 300 Win Mag. Like I said, though, but using a long gun like that is, very in a self-defense scenario, is pretty awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you might, but like I said, the air gun technology has improved quite a bit. So, maybe there are some good options there. But part of the, yeah, I personally, I would not use a BB gun in a self-defense scenario with anything. Actually, you'd probably be better off with pepper spray. That's just my opinion. So.
Good.
Yeah, it's all good, good info. And I know you didn't want to delve into, I mean, the thing is, the legal issues, because we're talking just practical self-defense, the legal issues, but do intertwine with it very, very closely, and like I said, too, is particularly here, like in my case, like, yeah, I'm not, if I'm attacked by a dog, I'm not protected by those stand your ground laws. I mean, I can still make a case for self-defense, but it's a lot harder. So, which they talk about how screwed up this thing is. It's like, how is that? It's like, it's easier to shoot a person and get away with it than it is a dog. Like, how completely fucked up is that? But that's the way it is,
Yeah, it's insane.
Yep. So,
if I may interject, the main point about it gives you no protection. It gives you the ultimate gray area to try to decide your own fate. So it's like, the books that we might have all had growing up, to choose your own adventure. Like, okay, so should I kick the dog and defend myself? Should I stab it? Should I shoot it? Okay, well, what happens? Okay, well, if I shoot it, there's these, and if I stab it, then there's this. If I kick it, then it's that. But if a nutter sees me, oh my God, every one of those stories change. So what's your protection? You got to kind of navigate that on your own.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Yeah, and I think everybody should keep in mind that, you know, I mean, Johnson, you know that since you got attacked as well. Like when that actually happens, then you will probably not have the time to, you know, to think all that through and to ponder all these different questions, because this is something that you have to do before, and you have to kind of decide for yourself, like even what kind of, you know, how far do you want to go in the whole thing? Because, you know, sometimes you just want to, you're already happy when you just make the dog, you know, not attack you and go away. But, you
yeah,
know, the situation might be different, and you actually really have to kind of counterattack it as well. So, and not just be, you know, leave it at that it actually, you know, it actually walks away and tries to attack the next person. So I was thinking about that after this incident here, and actually I was actually glad that it happened to me, and it didn't happen to my girlfriend, because my girlfriend, I mean, she's she's in good shape, but she's just pretty short, and she would never be able to defend herself against even a medium-sized dog. And besides that, one of our neighbors, he has a 3-year-old child, and that little fellow, he's extremely curious. So he would, like, if the dog barked at him and would lunge at him, he would probably not even be afraid. He would probably try to check him out and try to play with him. So he would definitely end up in the hospital probably, just because of his curiosity. And then, you know, in such a case, you also have to decide, like, what are you going to do? Like, will you just leave it at that and try to get back to your apartment, or are you in a situation where you actually really have to not only escape, but also you have to attack the dog yourself? And I mean, in that moment, I just decided that, you know, I can apparently not escape because it's coming after me. I have nothing to defend myself with because I failed to pull out my knife, which was clearly my fault. And then, you know, you just have to launch a counterattack. And then how are you going to do that, you know? And these are all things that you have to decide then within 3 seconds, probably.
yep,
And
yep,
I mean, you know, the long gun discussion, I mean, that doesn't even come in here because, like, as I said, in Europe, like, you're just not going to have a gun anyway. So it's you have to use other means. And I find it interesting that, for instance, you see on loads of our videos that there is one commenter, I think he calls himself Ace Core, or I don't
yeah,
know if it's a he or a she, but this person always leaves absolutely excellent comments, and it's often about it's often about the legal angle, and also about the self-defense angle. And yeah, I mean, I think this is it's really worth. Often he often talks about topics that I'm often thinking that I should actually even make an entire video about that. But
yeah.
I mean, perhaps I can, but right now I'm a bit too busy.
What you just said, like you just raised a very, very important issue. And it's excellent advice that I didn't even tell you this. Like if you take self-defense classes, and here it was mandatory if you wanted to pack a rod or even other weapons, there's firearms, knives over a certain length, blackjacks, which I think is a type of blunt instrument and so forth. But they tell you that, like, yeah, because you don't have, if something happens, you're basically being ambushed. You don't have a lot of time to react. And the thing is, it's a couple of things. It's important to train, like practice with whatever you're using. I even do that with pepper spray. I'll like put up targets and spray them, just so I get a good feel for it. Or, you know, if you have a knife, practice with that, or obviously with a firearm, practice with that. And so to make sure you're fluent in the use of the device, you know what happens is when you're under a lot of stress, your higher brain functions tend to shut down. So all you have is you can't really think that well. All you have is it's fight or flight. So you have to fall back onto that training. That's all you have is basically your training. So it should be automatic, almost like a reflex, right? Using whatever it is. And the other thing too is you want to, you know, think through the incident. How is it going to play out? How am I going to solve the problem? Like I said, the man who took down those 2 pit bulls in my neighborhood a while back, I would say that was well done. You know, there was somebody who was prepared, because, you know, a lot of people with dogs, I mean, they get attacked by these loose pit bulls all the time, spawning AAiHs. But but it's also good to think about what comes after, right? They tell you that and so that's why I encourage everybody, even if it's not, you know, like even like in my state, like they no longer have the mandatory requirement for the training and the like, but I would get it anyway. Like 100%, because it's not just how to like point at something and pull the trigger or stab it or whatever. You got to think through the incident leading up to it. Like, what do you do? How are you going to handle it? Think of all the different scenarios. What if you're attacked from behind or whatever, right? But you also got to think about, and they emphasize this also, what comes after, because. And normally they're talking about self-defense against other people, but as we've noted in some places, you know, dogs are sacred animals. So if you're standing there with a dead dog at your feet, with a bullet hole in it or a knife stuck in it, you got some explaining to do, most likely. So you got to really think about, what are you going to say? What do you say to the police? Do you have a lawyer? Everybody should ask themselves, anybody thinking about this, do I have a lawyer? Do you have a lawyer? Do you have a lawyer's phone number in your wallet? Okay, even if it's not, because I have a lawyer, he's a civil trial attorney who's helped me with a few things. But he could, you know, definitely, you know, refer to some, you know, because really you need a criminal defense attorney. You know, do you have a lawyer? When the police show up, or what do you say to the dog owner if they're there? How do you manage that? Because they're not going to respect, most of them are not going to respect the fact that you were just defending yourself. What do you say to the police when they show up?
Yeah.
Right. So you really got to think about it. There was, boy, we're really like digressing, but you know, when I was like my last iteration, my old blog, I had a frequent blog commenter who was a retired cop, and he was from Oakland. I think Mr. J will appreciate that. He was a cop, lifetime police officer. He was a patrol cop who then graduated or was promoted to a detective. And this stuff would come up all the time. And, you know, he was called in on a lot of self-defense cases. I think he's passed away now. I mean, I would love to get him on one of these calls, but I haven't spoken to him for a while. I mean, he was in his 70s 10 years ago. He may be passed away now, but he had a ton of good advice. I talk about a cop that's on our side. This guy was like a level 5 dog hater. He despised them. Hated dogs, hated dog culture, hated dog owners. But he said, because we were talking about this, and we even like discussed individual cases where involving, say, shooting at dogs. So he said there's one thing that's really important if you're involved in a self-defense scenario is you want to avoid any kind of aggressive posture.
Yeah.
Right. That's like your top priority, because let's say you shoot the dog that's attacking you and the police show up. You're like, yeah, I wasted that shit, but man, you motherfuckers. I put a cap in his ass. Don't act like that, because then they're going to think that there's some intent there. Right.
Exactly.
Because you want to avoid that. Right. And the other thing, you don't want to don't say you're sorry either. Sorry, Johnson, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just adding to what you said. No, you were showing like the intent that was your sole purpose, was to kill that animal. Yeah,
or you really wanted to, even if it was just of like a quote crime of opportunity. It's like, hey, there's a pit bull running at me. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this all week. It's like, no, you don't want that, right? You don't have to. So, because remember, you're just, in terms of self-defense, not just laws, but ethics, you're just minding your own business. Like I was talking about with mine, you're just, sitting in your living room watching a game and somebody breaks in and like with a machete in their hand, right?
Yeah, but you're sitting on the couch with the door open with a shotgun in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But so he said, you want to avoid any kind of aggressive posture. That's critical. He said, also don't apologize. You're not sorry, because if you apologize and you're kind of admitting that what you did was wrong, and what you don't have anything to apologize for. It's like, you know what? This thing threatened my safety and I did what I had to do. Okay, that's the narrative. Right. So it's really, but we were talking about a case once that's really screwed up thing, though. And Joe, you and I, well, actually, we've discussed this on many prior calls, like Sheepy was on one, and that, basically anyone who is in any way implicated in any injury to a dog is like guilty of animal cruelty. Like, even if it's like completely by accident, because even in a self-defense case, there's some motive. I mean, the motive is to protect yourself, which most people consider legit. But, you're backing out of your driveway and some dog runs under the tire and that's your fault. But, that's a problem. Really, it should be the other way around. Remember, John and I were discussing a case. It was probably kind of similar to that incident in New Jersey the other week. And what happened was a man was going to visit his girlfriend, right? Drives to her house, gets out. There's a loose pit bull behaving dangerously. It tries to bite him. He retreats into the house, right? Shuts the door. So I don't think he was injured. He might have been. I forget now. But so he's all pissed off. So she's got a gun in the house. So he grabs her gun, goes outside, blammo, shoots the dog, right? Dog doesn't die immediately. It ran back to the owner's home and dropped dead as a result of the gunshot wound. So, he was arrested, and it was for animal cruelty and inappropriate discharge of a firearm and blah, 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 threw the kitchen sink at him. And, what John had to say was, he said, well, look, because they're going to argue, like in a case like that he was safe inside her home, right, when he went back out, but then he went back outside to, confront the threat. And I said, yeah, I mean, that works if it's a person, right? So if the case is like, say you take your axe murderer scenario, right? It's like they chase into your house, you slam the door and lock it. Yeah, you can't go back out to confront the guy. Now, if he hacks his way through your front door, now you've got a legit self-defense situation. But Otherwise, no, but I said, but John, look, it's a dog. It's a dog. Is going after somebody like that like a good use of our criminal justice system? I don't think so, but apparently, you know, yeah, the system is, you know, rigged in their favor. So you got to watch out for that. But, you know, in my opinion, at the threshold for using violence against the dog should be lower, not higher. So that's something for people to think of. But with all of that said, yeah, it's like, you know, it's really important that, you know, you really think through the situation before it happens, and avoid any kind of aggressive posture. You know, that's and don't apologize. Again, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but that's those are still like good ideas regardless, right? So.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. I think that's good. These 3 points, that's excellent advice. Yeah, and I would urge anybody to actually think about that a little bit. Everybody listening, it can happen to anybody, and
yep.
We shouldn't fall prey to this misconception that yeah, we read about all the attacks, you know, in the newspaper, and we see it online, but look, it can happen to any of us. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and nobody, we should always emphasize it, nobody should submit to a dog attack. Nobody should be expected to. I don't care what the law says. And then, you know what? If that's the law, then the law is bullshit and needs to be thrown out. Nobody
Yeah.
should submit to a dog attack. You know, and it doesn't even have to be a fatal injury either. And that's, you know, what the self-defense laws, like in my state, stipulate. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a lethal threat. Like if somebody's like, you could shoot somebody to prevent them from, say, forcibly raping you or somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily have, it should be, it's typically, it's either death or severe bodily harm or some kind of, you know, forcible felony. Like you can't use force against somebody for, say, stealing your mail or your lawn chairs. But, you know, but if they actually, because that's chicken shit, basically, that's not going to fly. Simple trespass. No, but, you know, if they're really trying to like seriously injure somebody, then yeah, I mean, you know, the laws vary, but I think then it's ethical. But I think that the threshold for using force against a dog should be lower. If for no reason other than going after those people, it's just a waste of our criminal justice system.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Well, it's just a way to chastise anyone who will do anything against the sacred mutt, which, you know, I despise and we all despise so well.
yeah. Yeah, and that's really what makes a lot of people resentful towards them, because they, yeah, like you said, they have that sacred animal status, and it's ridiculous, right? When did we become a mutt worshiping theocracy? And who voted on that? Was that put up for like? Did we get to vote on that? Did we vote to, yeah, let's like dump all our rights and just force everybody to you know, worship Rover? When the hell did that happen? Or how did that happen? When did it happen? What say did we have in it? But that's the thing is, yeah, they very insidiously sort of, you know, taken over the system. And that's what needs to change. So in any case, guys, we're over 2 hours, so it's been a great conversation. I think I'm going to wrap it up, but I look forward to talking to both of you again soon. So this is Animal on Control, and as always, people first. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Peace.